welcome back. It's your boy Officer Dan and the crew from Gktech. On the bestest corner of the internet, we present the R32/R33 and R34 GTR roll center adjusters. We recently were blessed by the supercar RB gods to be lucky enough to be in the presence of one of the most iconic Nissans ever made, so whilst taking advantage of its presence, we recently smacked out some other front-end components for the GTR, so if you haven't already checked those videos out, feel free to do so at your leisure. Now, if you kinda already don't know, we list everything you need to know about these roll center adjusters on the website, which we will dangle in front of your very eyes right meow on the screen. So if you do need to know anything about them, please go to this page. This is the middle school playground where all the teenage hot gossip is kept, and we keep it updated on the regular. So if you need to know anything, the info's right there. Let's get these suckers installed, turning our baby Zilla into the big boy roll center corrected Gojira. Let's go. First step is to raise the Zilla and your hands at the same time in the synchronicity. First step is to raise the Zilla and your hands at the same time in synchronous? I'm just gonna say in sync. First step is to raise the Zilla and your hands at the same time in sync, praising the car lords that you have a hoist, then rip the wheel off and start by attacking and removing the split pin. Go ahead and maneuver that out of the way with your 14th favorite set of pliers. Get that out of the way, then sling that cage up and out of the way also. Get the closest rattle gun you can find, and if that doesn't have enough HPs for you, either get its daddy out or get a 22.5-foot long breaker bar on a wrench and try not to yeet that thing through the ceiling. Once that's out of the way, push the drive shaft in to make sure it isn't seized in the hub. We are loosening the drive shaft nut as we're going to need a little bit of room to get the studs out and the longer studs in, which you'll see in a tick. Head on over to the back side of the knuckle and loosen and remove the two bottom nuts that secure the FLCA to the knuckle. Now we need to lower the tension rod and FLCA assembly to have enough room to do what we need to do. So to do that, you need to support the FLCA whilst lowering the car on it, and this takes the pressure off the inner FLCA ball joint nuts. To do this, start by heading over, as our cameraman pans ever so smoothly with you, to the tension rod and loosen that nut, but no need to remove it for now. Go ahead and head inwards and loosen and remove the 4 nuts that are securing the FLCA to the subframe. Then you can raise the car, which will allow the FLCA to fall from the subframe naturally and safely. You can now leave it dangling there on the tension rod for now, as we have clear access to the bottom of the knuckle. Head on over to the bottom of the knuckle and you're going to want to remove the studs. To do this, wind a nut onto the bottom to protect the end of the stud's threads, just in case you wanted to go back to OEM one day. Slide a deep socket over the nut and give them a tap upwards. Once that's been done to both, turn the steering so the axle comes out a bit more, then pull the studs out of the knuckle from the top side. Go ahead and get the supplied extra long bolts and install the supplied washers, then slip them on from top to bottom. And now comes the anticipated time where your brain cells will divide, thrive, and grow with this newfound knowledge on this appropriately named segment called your knowledge injection. Okay, so we're going to scoot right on back in time and show the GTR being put back on the ground from the hoist at its standard OEM height. And thankful to our ultra handy underneath live car cam system, you see the GTR was perfect out of the box from Nissan at the OEM ride height, with all the arms being horizontal and parallel to the ground, meaning it will handle well and work as it should. Then along comes us, and Michael Schumacher over here decides to install coilovers and lower said Zilla closer to the ground, ruining pretty much everything that Nissan had designed. So although it's impressing a bunch of dudes, it's now handling like the Titanic in high tide. What this has done is also lower the center of gravity, known as COG for short, which is located at the middle point of the car's mass. Now, lowering said COG in your car is a great way to reduce weight transfer and improve cornering, but not so great for the suspension's little geometry. This means that by lowering your little Zilla, and all the suspension arms now point upward, which changes the roll center height, and that roll center height was carefully calculated by Nissan to be perfect. This lower roll center essentially gives the car more leverage between the roll center and the center of gravity, which makes it easier for the car to roll from side to side when you're cornering at ungodly speeds in your car. So, if you want to correct that roll center and not have it lean like the Titanic whilst cornering, you're going to have to change the arms from pointing upwards to back a bit more horizontal, which then increases the roll resistance and ultimately puts the roll center back towards where it was to start with, which is so much better for our dang little lizard. This can be seen right now on the screen with our ultra handy cam showing the lowered Zilla being low, but having its lower arms in a much better position, being horizontal, aka parallel to the ground. But wait, Dan, the guy I bought the car from slammed this thing so freaking low. What am I gonna do? This kit comes with a 5mm shim or a 20mm shim, so you can go either 5, 20, or 25, which should cover the majority of setups out there in the wild. And guess what? If you grow old and gray and still have a GTR and don't want to be that low anymore, these are completely reversible, so there's no modifications needed at all. You can go back to OEM like nothing ever happened. Hold on, Dan, the guy thought it was lowered, but it isn't. Should I still get these? I just need to modify this thing, right? No, super annoying hypothetical guy that's spontaneously asking these questions. From factory, if you were to add the roll center adjusters without lowering the car, you would be raising the roll center too high and the car would become extremely stiff and handle like a bag of wet potatoes, or dry for that matter. The one thing we definitely do recommend though, if you absolutely must modify more things, is changing out the tie rod end to adjustable ones. You always want your tie rod end to be parallel with the lower control arm. This is a super simplified explanation, as bump steer is best checked by cycling the suspension travel, but let's leave that for another day. And in this case, the tie rod would be equal to the spacing of the lower control arm that we are now spacing down. That way the tie rod and the FLCA are running on the same plane, horizontal and parallel from the ground, aka happy as clams. So this means that having both of them at the same time on a lowered GTR is key. If you do space the lower control arm down and not the tie rods, you will get some chronic bump steer, my dudes, and we kinda know a place that sells adjustable tie rods that we kinda might pop them up on the screen right now. So now that you've gone through all your annoying questions and hypothetical situations and shameless plugs, we can choose how thick of a spacer you want to install. To know how thick of a shim you need would depend on how low you went with your whip, and it would be a trial and error type of thing based off the science we just explained above. So the more low, the more spacing you'll need, and we can proceed with the install of said spacer. Throw the spacers up into their new home along with the front lower control arm assembly at the same time through the extra long bolts, and throw the washer and nut onto each stud. Now tighten and torque those both to the specs shown here on the screen. Lower said little Zilla whilst supporting the front lower control arm, whilst also making sure that the 4 bolt holes line up on the front lower control arm and that they slot into place nicely like you see we're doing on the screen. Once that's done, wind the nuts onto all 4 studs and tighten them in a crisscross pattern to the torque specs splayed out on the screen below. Now you can raise your little Zilla a bit closer to the Lord and remove the support that was holding the pressure on the FLCA. Head back to the outside of the car, and now you can wind that fat OEM driveshaft nut back on, laying the Torque Daddy smackdowns on. You're going to want to go ahead and torque those to the specs shown on the screen here as well. Then slip that cage over the top and throw that split pin through the hole, curl those ends for the utmost of Japanese safety. Go ahead and throw the wheel back on, but that's only if you want to actually drive the car, and dudes, we're done. Your GTR should now run alongside that bullet train, both managing to get to top speeds and now being able to finally handle like they're on goddamn rails. Go race some supercars and gap them like the GTR always does, and make Daddy Nissan proud. Speaking of railing, these are the guys that throw these videos together to provide the knowledge and information to hopefully give you a grin or two whilst installing these beautiful parts to your beautiful cars. If you don't know what you're doing, please reach out to a professional person who actually does. We want you guys to be safe out there, but if you have any concerns or just need some friends, email us and we'll get back in touch as soon as possible. This has been Officer Dan, Johnny Caps, and DK keeping these install videos alive, so you guys know what to do. Catch you on the flip side. Peace. It's now handling like the Titanic in high tide, and while we all know how that ended, I'll never let go, Jack, I promise. Anywho, Leo, we love you. This is, fuck me.